I always figured you'd know when something was wrong in your relationship. Like it'd hit you all at once. A dramatic scene. A message left open. A stranger's scent on the sheets. But for me, it started at a party. Not just any party, Jamie and Tasha's 10-year anniversary on the rooftop of this fancy downtown restaurant. The kind of place with exposed bulbs, overpriced sliders, and views that make everyone pretend their lives are more perfect than they really are. Brianna was wearing this deep green dress. The one I used to compliment every time she wore it. That night, I didn't say anything. Not because she didn't look good. She did. But because I was too busy watching her from across the room. She was standing by the bar with Dylan, her coworker. The he's just a friend guy. The one she always claimed annoyed her at work. The one she rolled her eyes about when I asked if he was the one who kept texting her during dinner. That Dylan. At first, I told myself it was nothing. They were probably just talking shop, grabbing drinks like everyone else. But then she laughed. Not the kind of polite, social laugh you give when someone makes a lame joke. This one was different. Familiar. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in weeks. Not toward me, anyway. Then she leaned in, like she couldn't hear him over the music, even though it wasn't that loud. And I noticed how close they were standing. Closer than friends usually do. Her shoulder nearly touching his. Her hand on her hip, angled toward him. And when he lifted his glass, she placed her hand. Not for balance, not as a joke, but gently on his wrist. Like they were syncing to the same rhythm and didn't even realize it. I watched from the far side of the room, standing near the appetizer table, pretending to care about a plate of dry chicken skewers while my stomach churned. I didn't want to be that guy. The overjealous husband hovering in the corner, arms crossed. I hated those guys. The ones who couldn't handle their wives having guy friends. But this felt different. Felt deliberate. Eventually, she spotted me watching and gave me a quick wave like I was a coworker she just remembered she brought along. Then she turned back to Dylan and laughed at whatever he said next. I clenched my jaw so hard it started to ache. I didn't make a scene. That's never been my style. I waited. 15 minutes later, she walked over to me with a refill in her hand and a smile like everything was normal. "You've been quiet," she said, sitting beside me. I nodded. "Just tired. Long week. You should have had that whiskey Jamie brought out earlier. It's probably older than our marriage." I gave her a half smile, still watching her. "You looked like you were having fun over there with Dylan." Her eyes narrowed for half a second. Just enough to register. Then she took a sip of her drink and shrugged. "We were just talking." "Looked like more than talking." "What's that supposed to mean?" "I mean the way you were standing. The hand on his wrist, laughing at every word." She scoffed. "Oh my God, Nick. Seriously? You're reading into everything." "I'm not trying to start anything," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "It just didn't look right." She rolled her eyes, louder than any words she could have said. "You're being paranoid again. Like always. I can't even have a conversation without it turning into an accusation." Again, that word, paranoid, it always came up when she didn't want to explain something. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I just stared out at the city skyline, wondering when things had gotten like this. When she'd stopped seeing me as her partner and started treating me like an obstacle to manage. "You should focus on yourself," she added, quieter this time. "Not worry about who I'm talking to." That stung. More than I expected. I didn't even know what she meant by that. Focus on yourself? Like I was some insecure teenager who couldn't handle seeing his wife around another man? I nodded slowly and didn't say anything more. Just stared into my glass, wondering if I was the crazy one. Wondering if this was my fault, for saying something, for noticing, for caring too much. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. It wasn't even the second. It had become a pattern. Brianna would toe the line. Talk too close, laugh too hard, act just a little too flirty. And if I said anything, if I even hinted at being uncomfortable, she'd make me feel like I was insane. She'd twist it around until I was the problem. Until I was apologizing for noticing. And maybe that was the worst part. Not what she did, but how I started questioning myself. How I went from noticing her hand on someone else's wrist to wondering if I was just imagining things. How I let her convince me that caring was a flaw. I thought back to other times. The office party last winter when she stayed an extra 2 hours, helping clean up. The late-night text from a coworker she forgot to mention. The new passcode on her phone that she didn't think she needed to tell me. But I'd always backed off. I didn't want to be that husband. I trusted her. Or I used to. That night, I stayed quiet. We danced a little, made small talk with friends, smiled for pictures, pretended like we were the happy couple with no cracks between us. But something had cracked. I could feel it. I think she could too. When we got home, she went straight to the bathroom, said she needed to wash her makeup off. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through photos we'd taken that night. In every one, she looked radiant, like someone who belonged to a different life. And in every one, I looked like a man trying to hold onto something already slipping away. She climbed into bed a few minutes later, back turned to me, and mumbled, "You're overthinking. Go to sleep." And that was it. No apology. No reassurance. Just dismissal. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, her words echoing in my mind. "You're being paranoid. You should focus on yourself." She was right about one thing. I did need to focus on myself. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure if us was something I could trust anymore. After that night on the rooftop, something shifted in me. Subtle at first. I didn't confront Brianna again. I didn't bring up Dylan. I didn't even ask questions. But inside, the questions started multiplying on their own. Silently, constantly. Like background noise I couldn't turn off. And that noise came with images. Memories. Small things I had shrugged off, excused, or explained away. Things I hadn't wanted to see for what they were. Now they came flooding back, each one clearer than the last. Like how, over the past few months, Brianna had started working late. A lot. Always meetings. Always project deadlines. At first, I didn't think much of it. She's ambitious. Driven. It was one of the things I loved about her. But it started feeling too convenient. I remember one night back in February. I had surprised her with tickets to a small concert downtown. A band we both used to love in college. I texted her, told her to meet me there after work. She replied, "Can't tonight. Big presentation. Wish I could." I went alone. She never asked how it was. Later, I found out that presentation wasn't even hers. It was her team lead's. She just stayed at the office anyway. Or said she did. Then there were the weekends. We used to have a routine, Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, lazy brunches, errands together. Then one weekend she said she was driving out to visit a friend at the coast. Megan, her old roommate from college. "Just a girls' weekend," she told me. "I need a little recharge." I was fine with that. She came back Sunday evening, said it was relaxing. But the weekend after, she went again. And the next month, again. No photos. No mention of Megan calling or texting. Nothing but her word. I trusted that word. At least, I told myself I did. But there were other signs. They all came back to me in flashes. Like fragments from a dream I hadn't understood until I woke up. Her perfume changed. That one hit me hardest. Brianna had worn the same soft floral scent since we started dating, light, familiar, the kind that lingered on my hoodies when she borrowed them. Then one morning, she stepped out of the shower and the scent was new, bolder, more expensive, and definitely not subtle. "New perfume?" I'd asked casually. She glanced at me like I'd caught her doing something wrong. "Yeah, sample from work. You like it?" It didn't smell like her. Not the her I knew. But I told her it was nice. Then there was the lingerie receipt. I hadn't meant to find it. I was looking for the spare charger in her nightstand drawer and saw the folded receipt under some notebooks. The total caught my eye first, $180. For 2 pieces. I didn't recognize the brand. But I Googled it. It wasn't the kind of place she bought things from. Not usually. Not for me, at least. Because, and this part really sank in, I never saw her wear anything new. We weren't even in *mate that often anymore. And when we were, it was quiet. Mechanical. Like she was there, but not with me. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I hadn't been present enough. Maybe I'd been stressed from work and missed the cues. Maybe I hadn't told her she was beautiful often enough. But deep down, I knew I had. I knew who I was in this marriage. I knew how hard I'd tried. She used to ask about my day. That stopped somewhere along the way too. It's funny. When someone pulls away, it's not always loud. Sometimes it's the absence that screams. The silence after, "How was work?" The way she'd listen with her body but not her eyes. Once, I came home and started telling her a story. Something dumb that happened at the office. She nodded along while scrolling through her phone. I stopped halfway through a sentence. She didn't even notice. So I tested it. I made up a fake story the next night. Something ridiculous about my coworker quitting to become a magician in Vegas. She nodded. Said, "That's nice." That was the night I realized she wasn't even trying anymore. But I still didn't say anything. I still smiled when she smiled. Still asked her if she needed anything when she looked tired. Still made coffee in the morning the way she liked it, 2 sugars, 1 cream, dash of cinnamon. Just the way she used to say I made it better than anyone. She didn't thank me anymore. I started walking through my own home like I was borrowing someone else's life. Watching her from across the room, wondering when the warmth had left, and how long I'd been pretending it was still there. One night, I heard her laughing in the hallway while she was on the phone. The door was cracked open. She was pacing, barefoot, wine glass in hand. Her voice soft and playful in a way I hadn't heard in months. I didn't mean to listen, but I stood outside the door anyway. She said something like, "You're so bad," and laughed. Then, "No, I'll call you when I can." When she noticed me, she jumped a little. Said it was her friend Cassie. I nodded. Didn't ask anything else. Later that night, I checked her call log when she left her phone charging on the counter. No outgoing call to Cassie. Just one to Dylan. I didn't confront her. I told myself it was one call. I told myself I didn't want to be the kind of husband who snooped. But the truth is, I didn't confront her because I wasn't ready to hear the answer. Because I already knew what it meant. There's a special kind of anger that comes from lying to yourself. And I had done it expertly. I remembered this moment from years ago. We were sitting on the floor of our first apartment, eating Chinese takeout after an exhausting move. She had chopstick sauce on her cheek, and she looked at me and said, "Let's never stop choosing each other." That memory stuck to me like a scar, because now every sign pointed to her choosing someone else. Not openly, not with a big announcement, but slowly, privately, emotionally. The kind of betrayal that seeps in under the surface and makes you question your own reality. It wasn't just that I suspected something was happening between her and Dylan. It was that I could no longer believe the person sleeping beside me was on my side. Every laugh she gave him felt like one she used to give me. Every late night was a question without an answer. Every glance at her phone was a silent confession she refused to say out loud. And I was tired of waiting for the truth to show up. Because the truth was already here. Some people talk about gut instinct, like it's a vague feeling. But when it hits you, really hits you, it's not vague at all. It's a physical weight. A pressure that sits on your chest and refuses to move. That's what I carried with me for days after the party. This feeling that the line between suspicion and certainty had finally vanished. I stopped trying to justify things. I stopped second-guessing myself. And I started watching. One Thursday evening, Brianna said she had a late meeting at the office. I didn't question it. I just said, "Okay, good luck," and kissed her goodbye like I always did. She smiled, but it felt rehearsed, practiced. Then she was gone. 30 minutes later, I realized I had left my work tablet at home. The one with all my project notes. I needed it to prep for a client call, so I drove back to grab it. I wasn't trying to catch her. At least, that's what I told myself. But when I pulled into the driveway, her car was already there. My heart rate spiked instantly. She hadn't mentioned coming home. I parked quietly along the curb, a few houses down, and walked up the side yard. The house looked normal, quiet, lights on upstairs. I used the side door to avoid making noise. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I just didn't want her to know I was there. Not yet. If it was nothing, I'd grab my tablet and leave. But I already knew it wasn't nothing. I knew before I even stepped inside. The moment I opened the door, I heard it. Laughter. Muffled but familiar. Two voices. Hers and someone else's. I froze in the hallway, staring up toward the guest bedroom. The door was half open. I couldn't see much. Just a sliver of soft light stretching into the hallway and a pair of bare feet on the carpet. Then I heard his voice. Dylan. I didn't need to hear what they were saying. I didn't need to see any more. The image was enough. Brianna sitting on the edge of the bed, barefoot, wineglass beside her on the nightstand, hands on his face like she was trying to memorize it. His fingers tracing slow circles on her thighs, like they belonged there. The room smelled like her new perfume. The one she told me was just a sample. I didn't say a word. I didn't push the door open. I didn't call her name. I didn't scream or demand answers. I just stood there, taking it all in, the softness of their voices, the low light, the quiet comfort of two people who had done this before. This wasn't new. This wasn't a mistake. It was a routine. I backed away slowly, made no noise. My hands were shaking, but I kept myself together. I walked downstairs, grabbed my tablet from the living room shelf, and let myself out the front door. I closed it gently. No slam, no sound. It was one of the strangest moments of my life, walking away from the biggest betrayal I'd ever experienced, without making a sound. I got in my car, pulled away from the curb, and didn't stop until I hit the highway. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt hollow, like something inside me had snapped, but not in the explosive way people expect. It wasn't rage. It was something colder, cleaner, like a knot that had finally come undone after being pulled too tight for too long. And in that moment, I realized the truth wasn't a wave crashing down on me. It was a door closing. Quiet, final, absolute. That night, I didn't go home. I booked a hotel room near the edge of town. Not because I needed space, because I couldn't look at her. I couldn't sleep under the same roof knowing she'd just been in our guest room, in our house, with him. The next morning, she texted me, "Hey, I got home late. Thought you'd be here. Everything okay?" A lie right to my face. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to decide how to respond. Then I put the phone down and let the silence speak for me. She didn't follow up. Later that day, I called a realtor. Told them I was looking for short-term rentals in the area. Something quiet, clean, month to month. I found one the next afternoon and signed the lease by Sunday. By Monday, I had moved a few essentials. Laptop, clothes, chargers, toiletries. I didn't tell her where I went. I didn't leave a note. I just disappeared from the life we shared. It's strange how easy it is to walk away when the person you're leaving had already let go of you first. That week, I met with a lawyer. The consultation felt surreal. Sitting across from a man in a gray suit, discussing paperwork and property like it was a business deal. I brought my tablet with me. On it, I had started a list of everything I remembered, dates, receipts, changes in behavior. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted peace. I wanted clarity. And most of all, I wanted to be done. The lawyer asked me one question. "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I told him, "I've never been more sure of anything." By Wednesday, the divorce papers were drafted. I sent them to her via courier with delivery confirmation. No handwritten note, no personal message, just an official signature line and a packet of truth. That night, she called me 17 times. I watched the phone light up on the nightstand over and over again. I didn't answer once. I didn't want to hear whatever excuse she had rehearsed, whatever version of the truth she was ready to spin. She didn't leave a voicemail. The next day, she texted, "Can we please talk? Please, Nick." Then, "You can't just ghost your wife." Then, "I made a mistake. Can we just talk before we make this permanent?" The word "we" caught me. We didn't make this permanent. She did. That night in our guest room, that made it permanent. All I did was witness it. I didn't reply. 2 days later, she signed the papers. No message. No meeting. No fight. Just her signature at the bottom of the page. as if it were a receipt for something she'd already returned. I looked at it for a long time, expecting to feel something. Anger, sadness, relief, but I felt nothing. Not because it didn't matter, but because it had already ended the moment I saw her hand on his face, and his hand on her thigh, in the room where we used to store holiday decorations and spare blankets. That was the moment everything broke. The paperwork, the silence, the moving boxes, this was just cleanup. After I finalized the move, I returned to the house only once, to grab the rest of my things. She wasn't home. I packed in silence. Took my shirts, my tools, a few old photos I still cared about. Left behind the wedding album, the vacation souvenirs, the anniversary cards we stopped writing after year 5. I left my key on the kitchen counter. Then I walked out of that house like I'd never lived there. And honestly, it didn't feel like I had. Not really. Because the version of Brianna I loved, the one who laughed at dumb movies and left notes in my lunch, she hadn't lived there in a long time either. The version who stayed behind? I didn't know her anymore. I always thought endings would be loud, explosive. Something would break. Someone would scream. The door would slam so hard the frame would remember it. But our divorce wasn't like that. It was quiet, like a slow leak in a tire. You don't notice at first. Then one day the car won't move. Brianna didn't chase me after signing the papers. I don't know if it was guilt or pride or just a complete lack of emotion. But once the documents were filed, she vanished from my life as neatly as she had exited the guest room that night with Dylan. No apologies. No follow-ups. No last-minute speech about what we had built or lost. She just signed her name and that was that. Maybe she thought I'd change my mind, that I was bluffing, that she had time to fix it. She didn't. My lawyer called me the following week to confirm the filing had gone through and that Brianna hadn't requested anything. No delay, no settlement, no division of assets outside the default terms. I had offered to split everything down the middle, but she waived it all. The house, the joint account, the car we'd bought together last year. She left it behind like she was running late for a flight and didn't have time to take luggage. I should have felt something about that. Relief, maybe. Bitterness. But all I felt was tired. A strange thing happens when someone betrays you that deeply. Your emotions don't explode. They dry up. At least mine did. The sadness had burned out weeks ago. The shock died in the guest bedroom. All that remained was silence and paperwork. After the filing, I stopped checking her social media. I had muted her months earlier, during one of her coast weekend trips. But I still used to peek. Out of habit, curiosity, pain. I'd scroll through her feed looking for signs. Anything that could explain when she'd started becoming someone I didn't recognize. But now, I didn't care. Her photos, her posts, her filtered captions about work and self-growth. None of it felt real anymore, like watching reruns of a show I used to love but couldn't sit through now without wincing. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. I kept the apartment simple. No framed photos, no plants, just a clean space where everything had a purpose. A place where nothing reminded me of her. I started waking up earlier, not because I had to, but because I wanted the stillness. Mornings used to be full of rushing and quiet resentments. Her hair straightener hissing, my coffee going cold on the counter, both of us pretending things were fine while avoiding eye contact. Now I made coffee and actually drank it, hot, on the balcony, watching the street wake up. I started writing again. Nothing serious, just thoughts, observations, fragments. Stuff I hadn't done since college. I realized I had stopped doing things for myself somewhere along the way. Maybe that was part of the problem. I gave up too much space, made too many compromises, hoping it would bring us closer. All it did was make room for someone else to fill. One morning, a few weeks after the divorce was finalized, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring, then another, and another. I finally answered out of habit. "Nick?" the voice said. It was Jamie, our mutual friend, the one whose rooftop anniversary party had been the beginning of the end. "Hey man," he said awkwardly. I wasn't sure if I should call. I stepped out onto the balcony. "What's up?" "I just thought you should know. About Brianna." The name hit my ears like an echo, distant and hollow. She moved to Atlanta, he said. With Dylan. I leaned on the railing. Okay. That's it? He asked. You're not surprised? No, I said. I'm not. There was a pause. Then he added, she quit her job, left the firm completely. She's not even doing marketing anymore. Just packed up and went. I stayed silent. I'm not trying to stir anything up, Jamie said quickly. I just figured, you know, you'd want to hear it from someone neutral. I thanked him and hung up. Atlanta. She had followed Dylan. Left everything behind for a guy she used to complain about at happy hour. I guess the affair wasn't just an affair. Or maybe it was, and she was chasing the version of it that lived in her head. Later that week, I got a message through one of my coworkers. A woman named Danielle who worked in operations pulled me aside after a meeting and said, "Hey, weird question, but do you know someone named Brianna?" I blinked. Yeah. Why? She tried to reach you, found me on LinkedIn, asked if I'd pass along a message. My stomach sank. She said she couldn't reach you directly. Wanted to know if you'd take a call. Sounded desperate. I told Danielle no. Politely but firmly. I appreciate it, I said. But I've moved on. She nodded, not pressing further. But I could see the question behind her eyes. What happened? I didn't answer it. Not out loud. But I knew. Brianna had made her choice. I had made mine. And now consequences were arriving fast and without warning. I found out later through a mutual acquaintance that Dylan had left. 3 weeks after she moved in. No note, no fight, just gone. Apparently, he had been seeing someone else the entire time. Got engaged in Denver. Blocked her on everything. So Brianna was in Atlanta. Alone. Jobless. In an apartment she probably couldn't afford. In a city where she had no roots. Poetic in a way. But I didn't feel smug about it. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. That version of her, of us, it belonged to another life. A closed chapter. Nothing she could say now would reopen it. I deleted her last message. Unread. That night, I went to bed without checking my phone again. First time in a long time. The next morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about her in my dreams. Not even once. And for me, that was everything. Some people believe in karma. Others call it coincidence. I never put much stock in either. But after everything with Brianna, after the silence, the paperwork, the move, the calls I never returned, I started to believe a little in cause and effect. Not magic, just math. The way you treat people circles back. Maybe not right away. Maybe not how you expect. But eventually it catches up. For Brianna, it didn't take long. I heard through the grapevine that she moved in with Dylan almost immediately after the divorce. Left the state. Quit her job. Abandoned the project she'd been working on for years. The one she always said was going to be her big leap. She posted about it at first. New chapter. Fresh start. Choosing happiness. The usual polished captions, filtered smiles, and sunlit selfies. But then she went quiet. No updates. No pictures. Just silence. I wasn't looking exactly, but I wasn't hiding from it either. One day, I got tagged in an old group photo by someone we both knew. I clicked the profile, reflex really, and saw she'd unfollowed me. Not blocked, just erased. Like I was a chapter she wanted to pretend never existed. Fine by me, but curiosity's a weird thing. It lingers. A week later, I checked again, this time from a browser. Her account was private now. Profile photo gone. Bio blank. The shiny new beginning she had flaunted so proudly had disappeared. I didn't ask anyone about her. But I didn't need to. That's when Jamie called again. "Hey man," he said. His voice a mix of awkwardness and anticipation. "So, I'm guessing you haven't heard. I already knew it was about Brianna." "She's back," he said. "Well, not here. Just not in Atlanta anymore." "What happened?" "She got dumped. Dylan, he left. Just packed up and moved to Denver. Apparently he got married. To someone else." I didn't say anything. "She didn't take it well," Jamie added. "Word is she had no clue. thought he was the one. I almost laughed. Not because I thought it was funny, just because it was also painfully predictable. Like watching someone speed past you on the highway, weaving through traffic like they're invincible, only to see them pulled over 5 minutes later, hazard lights flashing, smoke coming from the hood. Jamie kept talking. She tried to reach out to some of us. Tasha said she left this long voicemail, crying, saying she had no one, that she made a mistake. Did she mention me? I asked. There was a pause. Yeah, he said. Said you wouldn't answer her calls. Asked if anyone could convince you to just hear her out. I shook my head. I have nothing to say to her. I figured, he said quietly, but I thought you should know. I thanked him and hung up. And that was it. Brianna's new life had fallen apart in less than a season. 3 months. That's all it took to watch her burn everything down and realize she didn't have a way back. She had made her choice. She just didn't expect the door to stay closed. A week later, I got a message request from someone I didn't know. No profile picture, no bio. Just a single sentence. Can we talk? Please. One conversation. That's all I'm asking. I deleted it without opening it. 2 days after that, I got an email through my work account. Not from her, but from someone I didn't recognize. Turned out to be a former coworker of hers. Someone from her old firm. He was reaching out on Brianna's behalf, saying she was trying to make amends and hoped I'd be open to speaking with her. I closed the email and blocked the sender. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't. I didn't want to open old wounds that had finally stopped bleeding. I didn't need closure from her. I already had it, but she didn't. And that, I think, was the real payback. Not revenge. Not some orchestrated moment where I got to rub it in her face. Just the simple, irreversible truth. She had finally come face to face with the reality she'd been running from. And it was lonelier than she expected. In a way, I pitied her. Not for losing Dylan, he was never worth much to begin with, but for throwing everything away on someone who saw her as disposable, who used her for the excitement, the secrecy, the ego boost, then ghosted her as soon as it got real. The irony wasn't lost on me. She thought she was trading instability for passion, loyalty for adventure. What she really got was a lesson in consequences. A few more weeks passed. Then Danielle, the same coworker who told me Brianna tried reaching out, stopped by my desk after a meeting. You'll never guess who emailed me again, she said. I already knew. She's asking if I'll pass her number to you. Says it's urgent. I sighed. You can tell her I'm not interested. Danielle hesitated. You sure? I mean, she seemed really upset. I'm sure. And that was the last time I heard about her. No more messages. No more requests. Just radio silence. It was strange, though. I expected her to put up more of a fight. To try harder. Not because I wanted her to, I didn't. But because she always had this way of clawing at things when they started to slip away. But not this time. Maybe she finally realized I wasn't bluffing. That I had meant it when I walked away. That this wasn't just a phase or a punishment. It was permanent. There was a kind of peace in that. And slowly, that peace started taking root in my life. I was still in the same apartment, still keeping things simple. But I started to feel the shift. I laughed more, slept better, ate without that tightness in my chest. Little things, but they added up. One morning, I bumped into Haley, childhood friend. We hadn't seen each other in years, not since high school, maybe. She was in the lobby of my gym, picking up her nephew from a class. We recognized each other immediately. One of those awkward, surprised moments where your brain has to catch up to your eyes. We ended up grabbing coffee that day. Then lunch a few days later. Then dinner. Haley was nothing like Brianna. She was warm, open. The kind of person who made you feel like being yourself wasn't something you had to apologize for. We didn't rush anything. We talked. A lot. About old memories, relationships, work, fears. There was no pretending, no ego, just two people figuring it out. On our 4th or 5th date, I told her everything. Not just the basics, but the whole story. The doubts, the betrayal, the aftermath. I was nervous, afraid it would scare her off. But she didn't flinch. She listened, asked questions, then said something that stuck with me. Pain doesn't define you. It just reveals what matters to you most. Months passed. We kept building. One evening I pulled out the ring. The one I had given Brianna. It had been sitting in a box for over a year. I thought about selling it. Thought about throwing it away. But instead, I took it to a jeweler and replaced the stone. Same band. New life. I proposed to Haley 6 months later. She said yes before I could finish the sentence. That ring, once a symbol of betrayal, now meant something else entirely. Not a promise made too early, but a promise made right. Not, I'll never leave you, but I'll always show up. And this time I knew I would. By the time Brianna disappeared from my world, I had already stepped into a new one. Tampa gave me space, but Haley gave me something better, clarity. We weren't trying to impress each other. We were honest, vulnerable, even awkward at times, but it all felt real. I told her everything about my past. She didn't flinch. Instead, she listened like it mattered. We grew slowly, no games, no drama. When I finally proposed, it wasn't flashy. I just held out the old ring, now with a new stone, and asked her to build something honest with me. She said yes without hesitation. For once, I wasn't chasing an ideal. I was choosing a partner. That ring, once a symbol of everything I lost, had become a reminder of what I'd gained. Peace, loyalty, and the kind of love that doesn't require second chances. Just the right one. 3 years later, I was lying on a quiet beach in Georgia. Book in hand, coffee nearby, waves crashing. Peace. Then a shadow crossed my page. I looked up and there she was, Brianna, in a swimsuit, towel over her shoulder, frozen like she'd seen a ghost. Her eyes widened. She looked older, worn. She opened her mouth but said nothing. I didn't speak either. I didn't need to. Her expression told the whole story. Shock, regret, maybe even shame. But I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just calm. I gave a small nod and returned to my book. Whatever storm we'd lived through, it was over. And I had already survived it.